Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Titans as well as the latest episode of Van Helsing. Like always, if I'm talking about something that you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include a time when I start talking about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you want to hear what I had to say about this week's episode of Titans, you can skip to what I had to say about this week's episode of Van Helsing. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is this week's episode of Titans. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First of all, let's start off with everything dealing with Hank. Obviously, he's doing his whole, Hulk. He's on, he's doing these fights and stuff like that to get paid, and obviously he's doing a whole bunch of drugs. So it's like he's doing kind of what he was doing before, but without Dawn there to kind of reel him back in to kind of keep some sort of balance. So he's just kind of partying it up and fighting. A little interesting detail is the actor who played the dude that was announcing the fight, that's the actor who played Turin in Killjoys, which is interesting because not only, once again, the actress who plays Adeline is the actress who played Delsea, also from Killjoys. Not only are they both in the same show, but it's also like you are literally both in the same episode. So I'm like, oh, that timing and just like the, connectivity like that, just, nuts. But nevertheless, it's actually pretty dope seeing him fight and stuff like that, and just like especially against that one dude who punched him in the face, but the dude didn't move, and then they go at it, and he ends it with like I don't know what you call that move, a kick flip or whatever the case may be. That was pretty badass. And the dude stands, his head tilted up from the kick, and then he passes out after. I was like, that's pretty badass. Him running the gauntlet through all these different people in fights. I even love that lady being like, hey, you're a Hulk, aren't you? And he was like, nah, I'm not. You got me mistaken. And she goes to bone him. We even see later on, like, she actually has, like, near one of her boobs, she has a tattoo of Hulk. It makes you wonder, has she always had a thing for him? Because the Titans are, I think, well enough known. Because even it's like, the true leader of the Titans, Hulk. It's like, of course, Hank would kind of, probably be like, no, announce me like this. No, you think Robin was leading that ship? No, it was me. I was... What? Don't get it twisted. I'm sure Hank probably said some stuff like that, having to inflate his own ego, of course. He probably did the entire thing and think like, oh yeah, I am the leader. It never came up, but I kind of get that feeling. Hank seems like he's that type of dude, but regardless, I thought that was kind of a pretty neat element to the whole situation, but I like the ladies, and they're doing their thing, but he's so hurt from the fight. She's just touching him a little. She's like, ooh, just a little softer and softer. And she's like, okay. She's like, let me get on top. And he's like, ooh, just a little softer. He's like, yeah, that's it. I don't you can tell she's barely moving. So it's like, yeah, this might be doing it for you, but it's not for her. And then he passes out and he starts snoring. She's like, I knew you weren't the real Hulk. I love that. Too bad. You got the real deal. It just wasn't what you thought it would be. So obviously he's also, there's this whole complicated thing of obviously him dreaming about Dawn, because obviously it's like, the cycle of violence that we bring out in each other and stuff like that, being around each other. But obviously Dawn's kicking his ass in the dream. And it's like, the fact of the matter is, obviously the cycle of violence wasn't an issue because you're here kicking people's asses for money and stuff like that. It's just what it comes down to is you love drugs more than you love me. It's what that all comes down to. And so I love he wakes up. It's like, Hulk robbed a detergent place, a laundry mat. And it's like, wait, stole a whole bunch of detergent. Wait, what? And then he looks for his suit, and it's like, it's not there because, oh crap. I was like, at first I was like, wait, did you wash your suit and it got stolen from you? I'm like, that's a new low, like getting your superhero suit stolen. I mean, to be fair, once again, just because we've talked about it with Batwoman, Batman engineered weapons just in case his suit ever got stolen, just in case anyone ever got their hands on it. I mean, to be fair, Batman's in the situation of his suit special. Everyone else's suit is just kind of like, well, a suit, but I'm sure there's special qualities to each suit, even Superman's suit type. You get what I'm trying to say, which me bringing up the whole conversation of suits, that's another thing we'll kind of tackle a little bit later on in this. But I love that he ends up finding out it's like some kid on Instagram dressed up as him and just talking about like he busted a laundromat that was actually a front for selling drugs or something like that, which I don't know if that was necessarily true. It sounded like it was BS, but I love the first thing Hank does when he gets there and punches the dude in the face, because he didn't realize it was like a 17-year-old kid, technically a 16-year-old kid. But it's like, yeah, my mom's new boyfriend kind of says I'm not worth the calories. I'm like, that sounds like an asshole. And so it's that whole thing of, I think, Hank kind of took a little pity on him and everything. Like, oh yeah, that kind of sucks, but that doesn't give you the right to kind of go around doing that. And I love the kid being like, oh yeah, but I was doing the right. I was bringing justice and everything. Wait, was I supposed to kill him? He's like, no, you're not supposed to kill them. The fact of the matter is, the Titans, do justice and give back to the community and yada 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 yada. And I love that. And he's like, oh, okay. And it's like, you shouldn't have stolen my suit. He's like, I didn't steal your suit. He's like, what? He's like, you sold it to me. I'm like, what? He's like, you sold it. He's like, you were wanting to know where you could get some drugs at, and you sold me your suit for $200. I'm like, that's a super. It's even lower. It's like, it kind of be sucky if your suit got stolen. I was like, oh, that's a little low on the totem pole. It's like, it's even worse that you sold your superhero suit for money to buy drugs. I'm like, that's a new low. And even Hank was like, even he realized, like, holy shit, I've hit rock bottom. I'm selling my suit for drug money. That sucks. But I love the dude be like, oh my God, I met Hulk. Hulk came to oh my God, this is so cool. He's fanboying out while, like, Hank is literally going through a spiral of turmoil. It's kind of sad because, like, obviously Donna and, Dawn had looked into this whole situation about what was happening to Gar and Connor. And so the whole thing of like, oh, we need allies because we don't know where Dick is. Obviously, Corey and Rachel are off kind of doing their thing, trying to find Dick. So it's like, we're kind of in this alone, but it's like, we should go get Hank. But for Dawn, it's like, I'm not going to track down Hank because he left me. We can do this on our own, which is like, well, don't underestimate Cadmus. Cadmus is kind of like the right-hand labs to Lex Luthor. So it's like, underestimating them would be like underestimating Lex Luthor. I mean, granted, they're not Lex Luthor, but they're Lex Luthor adjacent. So it's just, they got a lot of money, power, and position that can allow them to kind of do whatever they want to. So that has to be considered as well. But I thought it was interesting too. I didn't know the lasso of truth because the way Donna was kind of explaining it, and we see it later on because Home Dude didn't remember anything. Walter didn't remember, like, he remembered their faces and stuff like that, but like anything they talked about during their interrogation of him because of the lasso of truth didn't come, like he couldn't remember it. So it's like, it can also wipe memories. This is the first time I've ever heard that. I did not know that was something the lasso of truth was capable of doing. I think that's so fascinating. I'm also curious about like how many Themyscirians actually have a lasso. Because that was something specific. Like I can't. It's been a while since I've seen Wonder Woman, so I don't remember how she got it. Because I think it's like a relic, like the Queen of Themyscira kind of has it. Like it was a thing from her mom that she ended up taking with her. No, now that I'm sitting here thinking about, I think I remember. Didn't everyone in Themyscira have one, or is it just the Queen? Because that might be it. Because I was wondering, has it been like mass manufactured so everyone has one? Or is that just like Donna and Diana thing? Let me know in the comments down below if you know. It's probably something I'll end up looking up on my own. But I am curious about that. I have to look into that. Because like I said, it's been a while since I've seen Wonder Woman. So I don't remember if the lasso. I feel like I vaguely remember other people having it. But I'm like, that might have just been like Diana's mom having one, and then she got it from her mom. That might be it, if I remember correctly. So it could be like Diana made one specifically for Donna, or like I said, or maybe at this point in time, more Amazonians have one now. Regardless, it doesn't really matter. I think the whole thing's kind of fascinating. So there's that side of things, and there's a little bit of things with Dick in this episode where he ends up visiting Adeline, where it's just kind of like, she's like, yeah, and I was wondering about that. I was like, how is Dick going to handle this whole situation of so many, the people after? It's like, oh yeah, because he's legitimately on the run. I'm like, how are you going to handle that? Are you going to basically make Dick Grayson disappear and just fully embrace your superhero persona? That was kind of what I threw out last episode, but I'm like, what are you going to do about that? I mean, I guess you have Bruce Wayne to help you potentially clear your name and kind of get rid of that. But it's like you literally have like an entire state basically on a manhunt after you. So it's kind of like, regardless of that, it is a whole complicated thing. Now I think we kind of understand a little bit more of why Adeline was working with Slade. I've subsequently since like all that years ago, because at first she was like, I didn't recognize the signs, but then eventually she saw that Jericho was there. So her son's still somewhere in there, which we got a peek of that at the beginning. I thought was kind of interesting. And obviously ever since like Jericho has been, and I do like the fact that Jericho can talk again. Obviously this is his consciousness, so obviously he can talk, but he's been trying to get out of his dad for the past 5 years. Like the reason why it's like, because, and I like that conversation with between Jericho and Slade, where Slade is like, the fact of the matter is I'm getting revenge on the Titans. I mean, they used you, they lied to you. It's like, yeah, they did, but at least they admitted to what they did. They eventually did. So he recognizes like everything that's going down, this isn't on them this is on you. You caused all of this. And because Slade's like, oh, like my whole plan was getting revenge on the Titans. It was a gift to you. He's like, don't try and sway that this is about them lying to me and manipulating me. It's like, no, you're pissed because they made me see you for who you are and compromise our relationship. That's what this revenge is about. You lost me because of them telling me the truth about who you were. I saw you for what you were now, and you were so pissed at them for that. I mean, to be fair, once again, you started this first when you were contracted to kill them. At the very, well, when you were contracted to kill, what was her name again? The woman from Themyscira, but obviously Garth got in the way. It's like, you killed their friend, whether he was a target or not. You killed him, so he, of course they're going to want revenge. So it shouldn't be that too shocking. But I am curious, like, how much of a balance this past 5 years has been. That probably has been why Slade hasn't been as gung-ho about getting his revenge, was because they kind of pulled him back to be like, yo, don't kind of do this. But it seems like it's been a long time coming. He just needed that video of Jason's to kind of set it off to be like, okay, now I'm going to exact my revenge, so. But I guess the entire time Jericho was kind of keeping him balanced. It's like, because like the reason why I stayed with you, Dad, because I thought you would save me. But now I see the entire time I've been with you, all you've done is just hurt and kill more people, Because that was even something Adeline said. It's like, that's who Slade is. He uses people, he manipulates them. Like in his own twisted way. To be fair, and that fits the character itself, especially when you think about the Teen Titans cartoon about Slade. That's him to a definite T. And in his own twisted mind, he's like, oh, I'm doing this for you, son. And I think he's so messed up. He legitimately believes that is his motivation for everything he does. Like, family's what matters the most. It's like, your family is super broken. Your family was broken long before this. It's just because your son didn't know the truth about you, but now he does. And so it broke it even more. But regardless. Circling back to the Dick situation of him being like, I'm going to try and save your son. And he goes and visits some dude named Stu, which Stu runs like a shoe shop and everything. And immediately my brain goes like, is Stu supposed to be like the Gamby of this world? Because Gamby's place was, is a suit shop, and obviously he made Jeff's, original suit plus the one he had for seasons 1 and 2. He made Anissa and Jennifer suits as well. So I wonder if it's kind of a similar thing. Like, it seems like Stu's just more so in the employment of Bruce Wayne. But I even love it being like, I love Stu's kind of like getting pissed and everything. It's like, oh, you're here. It's like, oh, I'm not in that business. And I'm like, are you pissed about the suit? And the conversation goes on. He's like, oh, here's a fruitcake. How about let me add this. This would be more fitting for you, right? And he's burns it a little bit. I'm like, yeah, you're pissed because he burned your suit. You're the one who made this suit and you're pissed. And he's like, I'm sorry. I even love later on when they talk to Lily's like, Dick, burning this suit? Really? And he was like, I had a bad day. She's like, such a drama queen. I love that. Busting his chops about it. But, it's like, the fact of the matter is, I'm really sorry about burning this suit, but you make great work. I appreciate your work. Obviously, Dick was going through an identity crisis last season. So obviously that's where that came down to. But it's like, hey, don't worry. Master Bruce said that you'll be on your way. And he's like, of course. Bruce already expecting everything, knew I'd come here to get a new suit and everything. Which also makes me wonder, like, the fact is, well, because typically I feel like so much Batman gear is Lucius, so Lucius might not be around in this continuity. Maybe he doesn't exist. Like I say, because like Lucius seems like a more modern DC continuity thing. Because like I don't remember him in any of the old animated stuff. It wasn't until the Nolan movies where he was played by Morgan Freeman. That was the first time I've ever seen Lucius Fox. And ever since then, he subsequently pops up in any other like Titans continuity. I mean, any Batman continuity. Batwoman, because his son is the one that's helping Kate. The Telltale games, he's a big part in that, and that eventually kind of leads down a similar path to Batwoman in certain regards. No spoilers. For anyone that doesn't know is what I'm saying. That obviously Gotham too. So it's like, I don't know whether he's a more modern character. I get the feeling I remember reading the fact is he's actually been around a lot. I guess he's just never been in a lot of the continuities that I've like watched a good chunk of. Regardless, going on a tangent. So I'm wondering, is that kind of the role Stu's playing, or is he just someone else entirely? Maybe Lucius handles more the tech side of things, and Stu's the one who comes up with the suit. But it seemed like in his continuity, it's both. Regardless, it doesn't matter. I'm getting caught up in, my own tangents and stuff like that. But they do show off the new suit and everything. It's like, you guys have outdone yourselves. So that's what we got to look forward to next episode. But circling back around to the whole Deathstroke thing and the whole Rose thing, because she basically explained her situation to Jason. It's like, oh, they had this sweet moment, the hot dog thing, and it's like, oh, he's like, so will you? And he was on one knee and he's like, try these, and she's like, I will. And he's like, oh, yeah, thank goodness you're going to do that. I thought it was kind of a cute moment between them, but it's like, hey, the Titans need help. Just because everything with Garm, but obviously Jason was like, no, we don't need that. They didn't need us. We don't need them. But then like Rose is like, she knows her dad. And the fact is, and that caught me by surprise. I was like, oh, she's some like, obviously we know it was BS, but it's like, no, she turns out, I mean, it makes sense. I just wondered if there was like, was it meant to cover it up by making it seem like, oh, she was actually his daughter by having them have similar abilities. I thought it was something like that, but it's like, no, her abilities does directly come from him, because it is, the fact is that her and Jericho are half siblings. So that's why that never tied together. That's why I just felt like that should have come up more, but that's why, because they were unaware of each other. They did have different minds, which I figured as much, but I kind of thought because it was revealed that it was a lie, that I was like, oh, that she was there because she was planted by Slade. I was like, okay, so never mind then. But obviously, like, she had noticed, like, she kind of has like the whole like Claire from Heroes, Claire being Hayden Panettiere's character, save the cheerleader, save the world, because she had like a rapid healing ability, very similar to theirs. So I was wondering if it was a situation. Well, I think it's kind of interesting. Like, she was testing it out and be like, yeah, see, all this stuff happens, Mom. Tell me the truth about my dad. Basically, it was kind of like a nothing serious type of thing, and then gave birth to Rose. Rose goes to visit her dad. She kind of shows off like, hey, I'm like you, and he pushes her away. Do note that this was after the whole Jericho thing. So part of me wonders, was that Jericho was subsequently pushing her out of the way, be like, yo, don't get close to our dad, don't get close to him. But then eventually he took back over and it was like, nah, I'm going to bring you into the fold because I'm going to train you up because you're my kid, kind of filling the hole for like Jericho not being there. Because we did see a little bit in this episode that it is a bit of a struggle, like of who's in control. And I guess that because Slade is mentally stronger, he does kind of get moments of kind of taking back full control. Like Jericho can't like get as much control. Like he got like the little sign language he sent towards Dick was just him being able to sneak out some without, his dad noticing. But it seems like eventually, because obviously Jericho was trying to walk him out in front of the road, but I'm sure even getting hit by a bus, obviously, as we saw with what happened to Rose, like her getting hit, then slamming into a van wasn't enough to kill her. This wouldn't be enough to kill Slade, but I guess it'd take him out of commission. Literally for like seconds before he like popped back up, but regardless, it's actually kind of sad and twisted in a sense that like Jericho ended up finding out about his dad and he wanted nothing to do with him, but ends up being stuck with him. Whereas Rose, who spent her entire life never knowing her dad, even finding out who he is, in fact is he gave her the suit and everything, which actually looks pretty badass, like her Deathstroke outfit. I don't think I've ever seen the mask before. I wonder if that specifically, like the fact is it cuts off like the bottom half of her face, like is exposed, like. Because I feel like because like even going by Teen Titans Go standards, she doesn't wear the mask. At least most times that I've seen her in the cartoon, she's not wearing the mask at all. So that makes me wonder, I'm like, is that what her mask typically looks like? I mean, I've never looked into it that much. So and once again, her character from Arrow, it's been so long, so I don't remember. Like I said, it might have just been a specific design for this continuity, the way it is, rather than being a full mask like Slade's. But basically, he put her through training and stuff like that. And obviously, him being the dad that he is, no holding back. I mean, granted, there were moments where it's like, oh no, like she could have fell back on the spikes, but he grabbed her. So there was some passion there. But obviously, like, because like, well, they rapidly heal. So obviously, he's not going to not hold back entirely. So there's that whole, situation. But I thought it was, interesting, like that she got closer to him, like because for her, like I said, her whole life never knowing her dad, and now she got to know him. That despite everything, it's like despite what they were up to, is like she didn't really know what they had planned and everything, but it's still the thing of like, hey, I get to be a part of this. I actually get to spend time with my dad. She finds out she has a brother, then finds out it's like, oh, a whole bunch of psychopaths named the Titans killed your brother and yada yada yada. Like he never told the full story of like, oh, like probably it wasn't until she heard that's probably what actually changed her mind, was actually hearing the truth about like what happened in Jericho. It's like, wait, Slade? Like everything was part of the plan, but I think when she heard from Dick that like, oh, Jericho died by Slade's hand, that your dad killed your brother, and it's like, whoa, it changed her mind a little bit. I don't think she had it in her mind that her dad was necessarily a good guy, but I think it was just because the fact of the matter is that she believed like, oh, her dad, he's a broken man that's just sad because his family was destroyed because of the Titans. But I think the more time she spent with the Titans, it complicated things, especially because she got to spend time with Jason. She kind of let her guard down, because I think she spent so much time around Slade trying to almost get his approval and feeling whole, like, oh yeah, I've found my family. But now she kind of found a home with Jason, especially when he opened up to her. Like, she was because obviously she ran away from her original life. We don't know, in all that time she spent with her dad, she probably never went back to her mom. So she kind of ran away from that life because she felt like there was a part of her missing. And now that she found that missing part, I'm sure there's a part of her that wishes she could go back. Who knows if she actually can at this point in time, So it's a very complicated situation. And obviously it gets even more complicated because obviously Jason doesn't like what he's hearing. It's also interesting too, because I kept wondering, it's like, okay, so how did you lose your eye? Was that part of the training or something? Like when she was falling back, I thought that was going to be the thing. She falls back and it pokes out her eye. I thought that's what this is like, oh no, just to prove like this was a real deal, he cut her eye out. I was like, that's gnarly. And the fact that she was still willing to go along with it, because I guess for her it's like, oh, we're getting justice. But then she found out, I guess, what the Titans were really all about. Even as screwed up as they were, she kind of got the feeling about what they were about. And also, once again, her and Jason happened because of that. But for Jason, it's like, how can I tell what's real? You say what happened between us is real, but at what point do I have to go back to be like, oh, was this real? Was this real? Was fucking me part of the plan too? Is that something you did on your own? So Jason kind of walks away, and obviously Rose gets a call from her dad. It's like, the Titans are getting back together, so we should be getting back together too, to kind of, deal with this once and for all, because Slade, this is his end game. He's planning on killing all the Titans. So it's going to be interesting to see what Rose is going to do. I don't think she's going to pick her dad. Obviously she's going to work with the Titans, but obviously now Dick knows that Rose has been a part of this, at the very least for some chunk of time. So that's going to be an issue. So that's going to be interesting to see how that all kind of handles going forward. Another element to this episode I thought was kind of neat is obviously we see with Corey, she's losing her powers a little bit. I'm guess because like she's kind of emotionally a little all over the place, so she's not in complete control. And obviously she's kind of snapping at Rachel of like, I'm the adult in this situation, and Rachel kind of being the kid, being like, I don't give a fuck about whatever planet you're from and blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't give a fuck about any. And obviously Corey kind of is crying a little bit, because for her, once again, it's the thing of like, for so long, at least, even when she didn't have her memories and everything, there was a period of time where she felt like, hey, I had control. She wasn't so caught up in her destiny and everything, that there was control in everything. But slowly over the course of this season, finding out about what's happening back home, her sister taking her throne, what happened to Fide, just everything that's happening now with the Titans, it just, all that control slipped away, and I think it's kind of being reflected in her powers. But afterwards, both of them are kind of apologizing. I was like, I shouldn't have said that. And like Corey being like, yeah, I shouldn't have called you an intergalactic witch from space. And Rachel was like, I shouldn't have said I don't care about your planet. And it's like, I love that being a moment, because because I don't know what their relationship is like in the comic books, but my mind immediately goes to, once again, the Teen Titans cartoon, because it specifically reminds me of an episode, the episode where Starfire and Raven switched powers, where basically, because Raven's power is all about focusing her emotions. If she ever lets her emotions get too out of control, her powers go out of control. And that was a hard thing for Starfire, because Starfire basically wears her heart on her sleeve. So she's kind of all about kind of flexing her emotions, like, which obviously is interesting correlation, because obviously like Corey's not the biggest in kind of showing that side of herself, but you see that vulnerable moment in this moment, and it just made me think of that. And the whole aspect of how, that episode in particular, they were pretty tight-knit, but I think that episode in particular is what made their relationship grow even more so. And so that's why I'm wondering, are they kind of a group, like a pairing, like are they really good friends in the comic books or not? It makes me wonder. I'm not sure everyone a part of the Teen Titans, I mean the Titans in general, well, let's go with Teen Titans, is like that, you know. I mean, obviously that's very true in the case of Titans as well. Just obviously they're going through a rough patch, but they'll get through it. But I think it's going to be, you know, I just thought that was kind of an interesting little element to it. Like I said, it just made me immediately think about that, you know. So the correlations between that, and I think once Corey kind of finds her center again, I think she'll get her powers back, because I think, you know, if she's not, because she's so thrown off because of, she feels like she's lost control, and it's obviously becoming a, like, rather than just being a psychological thing, which it is, it's actually become a physical thing, because obviously psychological stuff can lead to physical stuff happening with your body. So I think that's what's happening with her powers. So she feels out of control, so her powers are no longer in her control. So that's definitely going to be an interesting element to see where that takes, what that turns into going forward. Another side of this is the whole situation with Mercy using, you know, Gar as a weapon. We see it kind of in a more public sense of him attacking people at this coffee shop or whatever, even ripping into people and stuff like that. And she referring to him as pet and everything. I'm like, okay, so what is your plan exactly? So at the end we see like, okay, it's like, oh yeah, like Cadmus, because like the news was talking about the fact is Cadmus is going to step up and deal with this like animal attack, or rather it being some kind of experiment or something, and they even referencing the Titans and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, so is that what this is supposed to be? I think Cadmus, kind of much like Lex Luthor, is trying to like make themselves look like the heroes. So they're trying to get Gar to go on an attack, and then they show up, putting them down, as well as the rest of the Titans. It's like, we take down these superheroes while also boosting our reputation. And oh man, look at Cadmus, we came in to save the day type of thing. That's what I think. And they're like bringing Guard to like a public place. It looks like a fair or something like that, or a carnival at least. It's where a lot of people will be there, so he'll attack and call. Like, I think the whole point is for them to come in like the heroes. And that's interesting too, because we've seen what they've done to Gar. We've yet to see what they've done to Connor. You can pretty much guess. But I think that's going to be interesting potentially, like when the Titans show up. And like I said, so much is converging at once, because like it seems like the Slade thing is completely disconnected, but maybe it's going to converge on like everything Cadmus is doing, or maybe they are connected. I don't think so, but we'll ultimately have to wait and see, because next week's episode is in fact the season finale. It's definitely going to be interesting to see where ultimately all of this ends up taking us. And now moving on to this week's episode of Van Helsing, a great episode. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. This is a very, very unique episode, just aesthetically, just the structure of it, just kind of, well, one, like, this show does a really good job when it does episodes entirely focused on one entire plot, because a lot of times the storylines can bounce back and forth between different groups, even if it's groups doing the same thing. I don't know, I feel like when you think about it more recently, the episodes have been a little bit more focused, but even then it's like they're typically related to things they bounce back and forth between. But it's just like, it's always interesting when it's like a completely soul focused episode. They happen every so often. The show, I feel like the show's been doing them more and more with every new season, but regardless, this was really interesting because this episode gave us an insight we've never really seen before. We saw a little bit of this back in season 1. The last time we saw this is basically when we got Vanessa's story in episode 2 of season 1. Like, we've never really gotten this side of the Rising before. We've got bits and pieces here and there, like a little bit obviously with Phil's life to a certain extent, but other than that, like, Vanessa's story was like our only insight we got. And remember, Vanessa was out during the Rising, the entire Rising, because, you know, Home Dude had bit her, and she was in that coma for the 3 years. So it's interesting to follow Jack's character, kind of her be the ground floor of the Rising is kind of interesting. Her and her friends were on the way on a competition because they were in an archery club, and they're drinking and having fun. I like that. Aesthetically, like, what makes this episode interesting, because like I'm all over the place, but it's like this episode had a very horror element to it. Whereas, like, yes, the show has this horror aesthetic to it, but and it's something I brought up. Season 1 is very unique in what it was. It's a very like, oh, survivors aspect. Like, the best thing I can compare it to is like Walking Dead, where it's like, oh my god, danger's around every corner, and you feel that even present day, but obviously like everything's kind of gotten amped up, and it seems like people, like, survival was such a heavy thing in season 1. Like, people drop dead throughout the course of the series, but it's just like, it's different. Like, it has a different vibe. And even this episode is so different from anything in season 1 and 2, just because of it. Like, legitimately, it made me feel like this was a horror movie. Like, if you took this episode on its own, you could totally make this the plot to a horror movie. I mean, I'm sure horror movies have been built around this. I'm sure you take any like zombie apocalypse movie, like Dawn of the Dead type of situation, you probably get this type of episode. You would get this, but it was so unique to Van Helsing to kind of get that on many different levels. I mean, this group of girls, fighting to survive, and I thought, I was always worried just because the title of this episode, there's no I in team, is the title, and so I was thinking like, oh, someone's going to betray someone, but it's like, no, like luckily that didn't happen. It's them, once again, it's just kind of like you've never gotten this ground floor access to the Rising before. You've never gotten a group's perspective like this. So that was kind of really interesting. And them actually fighting to survive. Obviously, like, sadly, Kim was the first one to go. Shauna ended up killing that bellhop or whatever. But then, like, it was up to Jack to kill Kim, which obviously shook her to her core because it's like, even if she was turning into a monster, I still killed her and everything. So that kind of had her shaken for a while. And I thought it was kind of interesting because Shelly ends up taking the lead. And you could tell like her main motivation is getting all her friends out of there. More specifically, Jack. Because from the very beginning, you can tell it's like, oh, she's definitely got a thing for Jack. But then there's also like that dude they met. He's kind of got pale skin where it's kind of like, who the hell are you? Because they made a joke about them running, like Shelly and Jack ran into him in the hall. It's like, oh, another creepo here. But then he ended up saving them at one point in time because he ended up attacking their, wasn't it like he ended up attacking their coach and getting her off of them before she could attack them after she got turned. So I thought that was like so interesting, that whole situation. And them, trying to get to the police station to survive, getting weapons. It was a very actually very tense episode because like obviously we know this group isn't with Jack, but that doesn't mean they wouldn't have survived through it and eventually she would have. I was so curious to see where everything was going to take us, and it was just kind of like, and just to see like how quickly everything fell apart. It was just in that moment, like it literally took hours for things turned to shit. I mean, to be fair, you never get the grand scheme of like how much time has passed, maybe an entire day has, but it seemed like it's hours of like, all of a sudden, like it took that moment for the vampires to be like, oh, it's time for us to get loose and we can run amok. And it seems like everything just shut down. The police ended up mainly getting wiped out, but mainly that was because all the police apparently had left to go be with their own family. So, I mean, it's that human nature thing of like, yeah, putting other families' needs before your own. So there's a whole complicated thing. Then the only person left was that one cop, and he shot Sean down. I was like, that's an asshole move. I mean, literally, because I mean, I get it. It's fresh. It's new. You don't know, like, because obviously it takes not too long, obviously. And that's an interesting thing because I feel like most zombie stuff makes it seem like it takes a while before you hit that zombie moment. But obviously, like, in this series, like, the virus spreads to you super fast. Like, from human to vampirism, it takes seconds, So, obviously, no one understands this yet because we're literally just dealing with this. And so, he ended up shooting her because he was terrified. Obviously, everyone's scared. So now it's like, okay, Shonda's bleeding. We got to get her some medical help. And the cop, kind of not that useful because he's kind of stammering because he doesn't know what's going on. It's like, even though you work at this police station, but then he kind of gives them advice on how to get to a free clinic. They end up running into that lady. And that lady is losing her shit. And that speaks volumes. You're an adult, and it took Jack, a teenager, to calm you down. I think that speaks volumes of just like, Jack kind of surprisingly handles herself well under pressure, and she's holding the lady's mouth shut, and the lady's like, we got to get to my car. It's like, okay, we'll go get her friends. It's like, no, either you come with me or you get left behind. They use the car as a distraction, but the lady's like, I'm not gonna go. The fact of the matter is, we go out the street, we're gonna get eaten. So she's like, I'm gonna pray, damn you, demon seed. When she's talking about the monsters, they eat her. And what I like is that this isn't like, in a sense of, this isn't as bloody as I feel like Van Helsing typically is. It has its bloody moments, but it's like the tension is what matters. Like the way the camera moves in this episode is very just kind of like shaky, and just kind of like the way it zooms in is just kind of like the person behind it is put like the push in and how shaky it is. Like that just adds to the tension in this episode, which I thought was kind of interesting. I was like, holy crap. And so Shelly and Jack make their way to the clinic. Shelly kills her first vampire, and just, and I don't know if anyone else notices, in that parking lot, Is it me? Am I crazy, or did you see a kind of smile comes across Shelly's face? Like, it's good. Like, it's almost kind of like, I guess it was kind of like a nervous tick, but it almost seemed like she was kind of happy. I guess because she was like, no matter what, it's like, we're alive, Jack. We're okay. Everything's going to be fine. Like, maybe it was just her being hopeful or something. Maybe I was paying too much attention, but it almost looked like she was almost like nervously smiling, but maybe that could have just been a defense mechanism for the like shitty situation they found themselves in. But regardless, they kill the vampire, they gather up supplies. Vi is calling Jack back. It's like, yo, get to the hotel. Dad's sending a chopper that way. It's like, okay, let's go back to Shonda. Bam, they hear a gunshot. It's like, okay, the police officer's dead because he was threatening to kill Shonda because he was paranoid and thought she was going. But part of me wonders, was that true, or did Brittany kill him to get him back for the fact that he shot Shonda? You'll never know. Because once again, I mean, if anything, I'd say the movie, this doesn't even have to be a long movie. You can look at, this is basically a short film. This could definitely fit very nicely as just a one-off short film, and it's so interesting because it seems like it's so encapsulated as just being Jack's story but it seems like, okay, other than it giving us background to Jack's situation, what else did it do? At least Vanessa's situation lets us understand how Vanessa ended up where she was in the first episode when we got introduced to her being Sleeping Beauty, being in a coma for 3 years. So it kind of led to us kind of getting some background, understanding her desperation to find her daughter Dylan. It gave us that insight. But I'm curious to find out what insight this episode is necessarily going to lead us. It has to be whoever that great skin dude is, because it's like, obviously he's got to be something else. You'd assume a vampire, but part of me is like, well, because I don't think he's going to end up being anything else. But the thing is, like, the comic book that this is inspired by, Helsing, is more inclined to be... It has similar aesthetics to this series, but it's more inclined to be more like the Van Helsing movie with like Hugh Jackman and Kate Beckinsale, because aesthetically it's got that Victorian era type of aesthetic, but it's also like she doesn't just go up against vampires, she goes up against plenty of like supernaturals, like she crosses paths with like Frankenstein and Frankenstein's monster, that type of stuff. Just from the little bit I've seen of like covers to like the different comic books and stuff like that, or rather graphic novels. So I don't know whether that dude's something else or whether he is. But the thing is, it's like he's protecting her, telling her to get to the roof, which in another part of my brain is like, the entire time I'm like, you don't think that's her dad, do you? Well, I mean, because I was about to say, we got introduced to what he looks like last episode. Well, because we know that everyone else kind of has like that, ash skin tone, whether it be... I'm blanking on the Oracle's name. I always stumble on her name. Isn't it Bathory? Her and Michaela kind of have that ash skin tone because it's obviously kind of like what they really look like, and then they make themselves look more human and stuff like that. I'm wondering, was that supposed to be her dad? Could that have actually been him there saving her? Maybe that's what he really looked like, because it's such a small thing that pops up multiple times throughout the episode, and he was telling Jack to get to the roof and everything. I'm like, what the hell is up with that? What does that mean? Who the hell is that? Because that's the only thing carrying over from this episode. I mean, I guess it gives you a little more insight into character development and understand all that Jack has been through, all that she has lost. The fact is, she lost her friends. She felt responsible because she killed Kim. But it was like you did that to save everyone. Everyone tried to tell you that, lost Shonda because of that. You promised to save her, but you couldn't. Brittany ended up dying because she ended up getting killed on the staircase. Shelly gets bitten and she ends up killing herself because it's like she loves Jack, and it's like I need to make sure that you at the very least get out of this okay. So making the self-sacrifice, she ends up killing herself. And I'm like, dude, in the grand scheme of things, I said it's a great episode, but when you break it down, just kind of like her ending up alone on a roof crying out like that, it's like, it's a bummer of an episode. That's like mega depressing. I figured it was only going to end one way because I figured that group wasn't with her, but you'd at least assume, like, when it's all said and done, maybe some of them would get out of this, but eventually, like I said, I was almost waiting for the thing of, like, once again, no I in team. I was thinking, like, oh man, there's going to be, at least I think that's the name of the episode. I'm pretty sure it is, but I could actually be full of shit on that. But regardless, I was just waiting for like, oh, please don't let someone betray someone. But it's like no one betrayed anyone. I was like, the helicopter was sent there specifically to pick her up. I was like, why didn't you? I mean, well, we see they ended up getting attacked by vampires because some of the soldiers are dead on the helipad. So I guess they stayed as long as they could. But still, it is so interesting because we do see and we do know that Henson, William cares very deeply for both Vi and Jack, which part of me wonders, did he actually not know that Jack was still alive? I mean, I guess I guess he never knew like the full extent of what the Van Helsing was capable of, the whole rapid healing thing. So he probably had no idea that neither Vi nor Jack could do that. I mean, he was looking after him for a long period of time, sure, but I don't know what to kind of make of that. And then I don't know. I'm curious, like I said, it's such an isolated episode, and that's what makes it so interesting, because like it fits itself inside of this little box that I feel like literally no other episode fits like that. Because any other episode that might be singularly focused like this, whether it be like season 2's finale with Scarlett and her mom, that was like heavy ass plot development. But this was just like, this is like, you know, a flashback, but I guess like that had some integral moments that are going to play an important role going forward. Because it's interesting, because you have to think about it. It's like, we're near the end of the season. Why pick now to tell this story? I mean, I guess it's like now that we know who Jack is, and I guess the whole thing is, when you actually think about it, sadly, ironically, because of everything. Well, because I was about to say, to be fair, it took a daybreaker, a daywalker biting her and Violet to activate that side of them that is like Vanessa. It wouldn't naturally activate in any normal Van Helsing. It's because they specifically came from her. So any vampire bite, I don't think would have necessarily done it. It had to be a daybreaker. Daywalker. I keep saying Daybreaker. Jesus. I think it's just because of the TV show Daybreak kind of like has got that stuck in my head. I think maybe. Regardless, I should also look into the actress who plays Jack. She seems so familiar. I don't think I mentioned that before, but like looking at her in this episode, I'm like, I feel like I recognize her for something and I can't place it. I have to look into her IMDb because she looks so familiar, but I could be mistaking her for a different actress. But regardless, I'm like, because the thing is, I was saying ironically, because it's like, well, you could have saved everyone, but that's the thing. Like, it takes certain conditions for their whole thing to awaken. It's not just purely like because Vanessa's kicked in from just being bitten by for a regular vampire, so they would have too. But the thing is, you go your entire because they went their entire lives never being bitten by vampires. Obviously over the course of the 3 years in the Rising, well, technically 4, because I think technically it's 2020 now, if I remember correctly. I think they set that up last season that it was currently 2020. So I don't know if it's 2021 yet or not in this currently, but it might still be 2020. But regardless, in that like 3 to 4 years, like you avoid getting bitten, because getting bitten is a death sentence, right? So I was about to say, is like, right, because the mutation of turning back into a human and being able to rapidly heal, that came from being bitten by a daywalker, but a regular vampire bite. So the point I was trying to make is that technically you guys were actually the cure the entire time. So I guess maybe that's supposed to make that situation, Jack's situation, even more sad and tragic, because she was a walking cure and she didn't even know it. Like, her friend literally killed herself to make sure that Jack was okay. She was like, I didn't want to hurt you. And it's like, sadly, and in a very twisted way, she could have saved her friend. Obviously, she wouldn't know what she knows now, because obviously so much was kept from her. But I'm wondering, is that supposed to be like the even sadder aspect of this episode, is because of that, of like, she was technically a walking cure and she didn't know it. Like, because at least 3 of her friends, Kim, Brittany, and Shelly, all got turned. You know, everyone, well, Shona's case was obviously different, but still, you know. So that was a very, very, I don't know. Episode really sticking in my head just with all that craziness that, you know, went down. So, like I said, I am very, very interested to find out, like, what this means going forward. Like I said, it doesn't seem like there's much you could take from this episode except for like some character development, kind of understanding where Jack came from to get to where she is now. But I'm like, you know, especially where we left off with her story, that I'm kind of like, it's just interesting that we get this now. So it must play some role with Jack, or maybe it kind of plays into like the darkness that's in her. Like maybe it's kind of supposed to play into that, because it seemed like Violet, because like Vanessa has the darkness in her, but it seems like Jack has it as well, but it seems like maybe it's not in Violet, so that's a whole complicated thing. So maybe this is kind of feeding into that. Maybe, or maybe stuff from this episode is going to circumvent, like maybe someone's later on going to use this against Jack, of like, because we know that the Oracle and Michaela can get inside of people's head. Like obviously they got inside of her head last episode. That's why part of me kept wondering, is like, is this actually like them manipulating some old memories of yours? But it's like, no, last time we saw you managed to get away because your dad held the two of them off, and he was talking about trapping them in their own trap. Regardless, I'm going on a tangent. I'm so interested to see where the next episode takes us with all of this. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.